That not my name.
Unwelcome, goodbye, shalom, aloha. It is not Bizarro. I hope you guys had a good day today. We are recording on Thursday, March the 12th. If you are not a Patreon, you can become a Patreon by going to patreon.com/Bizarro Style. And I always appreciate it if you like, subscribe, and comment on the video. And I'll give you some guidance at the end of the video on what to comment about, because my guest and I will want to hear your comments. So my special guest tonight is MattyBo23, or as you are now known, Vote, Detective Chimp.
That is right.
So are you going to leave that like that?
I think for some time I probably will.
Until you get him?
Maybe not that long. I don't
It
know
might
that
be
I
a
could-
while.
Yes, it may be a very long time before we see Detective Chimp.
Yeah, especially after what we did. But I enjoy the name and I appreciate you keeping the cause alive.
Of course. I actually want him in the game.
I know. There are a lot of folks who actually want him in the game. Bizarro Flash wants him in the game. He's a big character in the Justice League Dark series that's going on right now. So, although we made a joke out of it, he's no joke as a character.
Right.
Anyway, so you are here with me, and we're going to talk about Reworks. And before we get into what we want to do here with Reworks, what I want to do is cover a few of basics of a Reworks. So first, to talk about, well, what is even a rework? So that the listeners or viewers know what we mean by a rework in case they don't know. So sometimes, at least, and this is the way I think about it, and I want to hear the way you think about what a rework is, but I think of a rework as like either a character's kit design was originally not very good, or that the character has become stale over time and just sort of outlived their usefulness. So the developers have to go back and change the kit and make other changes to the way the character operates, sometimes adding a new ability if they only had 4. And that makes it where the character is then reworked. Is that how you think about it when you think of a rework?
Yes, that's something that I would agree on. For the purposes of our show tonight, I kind of took an approach of who improved the most over who was just refreshed with updated strength. Yeah,
and we can talk about that too, because that sort of leads into the next thing I was going to say is sort of, so we're talking about the idea of what a rework is generally speaking, but then we needed to go a little bit deeper to say, well, how are we defining what a rework is for the purpose of this show? Because when you and I were talking about it, we were saying that if you go back all the way to the beginning, there was technically a rework of Superman, and I saw Doombox even arguing that prior to Superman there was a rework of Yellow Lantern Sinestro. So part of what we needed to do was define what a rework is, because it's ultimately going to define our choices as we go forward. So the two things I was going to say, and then of course I want to hear what you think, Matty, is so first is I thought that we were only going to talk about reworks since the 2 reworks a month sort of strategy by the developers started in September of 2017. And part of that is, and I'll be showing a graphic on the screen. This is that graphic, Matty, where it basically shows every character since the beginning of the game by month. And there were some reworks technically before the twice a month reworks started, but you and I didn't really feel like those were the reworks that we were thinking about for the purposes of this video. So no small reworks like the Superman tweak, or when the community was really upset that Spectre's basic was not special damage and that was changed. I don't consider those reworks.
I
So
would.
that's what I was just going to say. So do you agree with that?
Yes.
Now, where you and I start to disagree a little bit, I think, and where it'll shape our choices is that you don't see, and you just had said this, but maybe we can get into it a little deeper. You had said you don't feel like that the power ups are really a true rework.
Right. And I'll give a specific example of that, and that is Black Adam, who I thought was just already a phenomenal character. So it moved him from, an A plus or an S minus character to bona fide S.
Right.
So while I agree that his rework was fantastic, I wouldn't necessarily call him best.
Right. And I think this is where you and I disagree because I do feel like sometimes some tweaks and changes to a kit along with a power up are good enough to really vault a character from being okay to really decent. And I'll have my example later in the show to illustrate that. And it won't be Black Adam because otherwise it'll be redundant. But this is what shapes our choices, and when we're making our choices, it's good to lay out how we think about it because other folks might think about it very different than we do.
Right.
Anything else that you and I that I missed that you feel like was either different between us or that we agreed on for the definition of a rework?
No.
Okay, good, good. So, with that being said, so that kind of gives the audience an idea of what we mean broadly speaking about a rework, and then how we defined a rework for the purpose of the show. So, I had made a graphic, and it's here. I want to thank M4 from the Owls for giving me again that graphic of the monthly characters, because from that I was able to make this graphic of all the reworks by affinity. And I thought what we would do, being some of my audience doesn't watch the video version, they might be just listening in the car, that we could list all the different reworked characters and we'll just go by affinity. Do you want to start with energy?
Sure, sure. And these are in alphabetical order, so not necessarily the order in which they were in.
Right, good. Yeah, good point.
So for the energy characters, we have Arcus, Batman the Dark Knight, Bizarro, Cyborg Superman, Doomsday, Fire, Flash, Hal Jordan, Hawk, Jessica Cruz, Green Lantern Stewart, Killer Frost, Livewire, Reverse Flash, Sinestro Yellow Lantern, um, Lex Luthor, Steppenwolf, Superboy, Supergirl, and Terra.
Right. And the one thing I do want to mention is that according to the notes that we had, Hawkgirl's actually been reworked twice. And we'll try to mention each character that's been reworked twice. So for the mystical characters that have been reworked, you've got Aquaman, King of Atlantis, Ares, Black Adam, who has been the benefactor of 2 reworks, Blue Beetle, Dr. Fate, Katana, Mara, Raven, Shazam, who's also been reworked twice, Silver Banshee, Sinestro White Lantern, Siren, Solomon Grundy, Star Sapphire, Swamp Thing, and Vixen. And then last, we've got the physical reworks, which this is actually the longest list. And I had somebody who commented to say, oh, there's so few mystical reworks, but keep in mind there's also fewer mystical characters, so you're drawing from a smaller sample. So you want to hit the physical reworks?
Sure.
Thanks.
So for the physical, we have the other Lex Luthor, Bane, Batgirl, Batman World's Greatest Detective, Beast Boy, Black Canary, Green Arrow Castaway, Catwoman, Deathstroke, Dr. Poison, Harley Quinn Mad Jester, Huntress, Joker Clown Prince of Crime, has been reworked twice, Killer Croc, Nightwing, Penguin, Poison Ivy, Red Hood, Robin, Scarecrow, and Suicide Squad Deadshot.
And I'll leave that graphic up for the remainder of the show so people can follow along with the folks that we're talking about. Because what we're going to do is we're going to hit what we think are the best reworks, and we're going to each choose our top three for each affinity, and then we've also chosen our top three overall. And then there's a couple other categories that we'll go through for other types of rewards, if you want to call them, or awards, if there was like a award ceremony for reworks. But one thing I do want to point out is you and I have not shared our answers with each other because we wanted to be able to debate live about whether we agree or disagree with each other's choices, because I thought that would make for more interesting conversation than if we had known each other's before. So why don't we just start with energy and see, and we'll go in reverse order. We'll choose our number 3 pick first, our number 2 pick second, and our number 1 pick third. So we're going in reverse order. So do you want to start with your number 3 pick for energy?
Sure. So for energy, I would say the Flash would be.
Interesting choice. So when you chose the Flash, was it about how much he was improved, or sort of what were you thinking when you chose him? Because I will say I don't have the Flash on my list, by the way.
Gotcha. Again, so my metric for the best reworks are people who probably weren't useful in a lot of matchups before their rework, who became useful in matchups before his rework. Flash he wasn't showing up a lot. I certainly never used him before.
Right.
So yeah, so he was one of the people that kind of impressed me the most from where they were to where they ended up.
Yeah, because that was like what I was thinking about too. It's almost like there's it's not measurable, of course, but it's almost like there's a distance between where did they start and where did they end up. And so
right.
Because one thing I was thinking about is, what if a character was just so bad that it would be really hard for them to improve over some of the better characters, but that distance was still really great between where they started and where they ended up.
Right.
Does that make sense, the way I'm saying it?
Yes.
So, because my third choice was actually Superboy. And the reason I chose Superboy was based on that logic I just described. He was F tier. He was terrible. Nobody used him. And I felt like the rework was really substantial, and his kit changed a lot. And he is, to me, is even useful now. It's like with the introduction of Cassie Kane, who's invisible all the time. To me, Superboy is invaluable for a character like that.
I would agree.
So it's interesting because, I can see the choice of Flash, but I really felt like Superboy was just a little bit better. But again, I don't think Superboy is a stronger character than the Flash, but I just think the distance between where he started and where he ended up is greater than the distance for the Flash.
Right, and I would agree with you. He is actually my my number 2 in terms of my green reworks. So
gotcha.
yeah, he improved a whole lot from his rework. I remember I just couldn't wait to get him geared up right after.
Yeah, in fact, I remember you were the one who inspired me to gear mine.
Yeah,
because I saw how much you were enjoying using him.
Yeah, he's just a fun character to use now, especially with Kaga still being everywhere.
Right. Good point. Because he is a really good natural counter to Castaway Green Arrow.
Right.
I always call him Kaga. I guess other people call him Gaka or something. I always think of it as like Gaia and Gaka or Kaga. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that was interesting about Superboy's rework is his whole what's the term for that? He became a special tank, right?
Yes.
and he was not a special tank before. What do you call those various categories? I'm having a brain fart.
Niche.
Niche. Okay. Yeah. So
I mean, he was just nowhere to be found.
yeah, yeah, and I
I mean,
mean,
you had a couple people that kind of forced him into teams. Just he was awkward before.
because you take a character like Solomon Grundy, the character set that he has as a tank did not
Hmm.
change with his rework. So it's really a dramatic rework when the whole character categorization of the character changes from I'm not even sure what Superboy was before to a special tank. That's a pretty significant rework.
Right.
So
I
it's
would agree with
interesting
that.
you and I had that on the same one. Um, so I wanted to raise one with you to spark a little bit more discussion about the Flash because there was this part of me that wanted to include Reverse Flash on the list, but he's an example to me if he was already so strong and already had such a good kit.
Right. That's still my Black Adam
Right.
argument, where he was just so good before, and they just kind of brought him back up a little bit to where he was in the old days.
Well, with a character like Reverse Flash, I think the big improvement that gives him survivability in the age of Wonder Girl, even that small tweak of giving him the chance of getting awareness, I think really invigorated the character in the game because otherwise he was just Wonder Girl whip fodder.
Yes.
So that's why it's like that's what makes it so hard to choose these because like something like that brings the character back is and I've been using Reverse Flash all the time in the Lex meta, which wouldn't have been able to happen if he didn't have that awareness that comes up sometimes.
Right.
All
I
right,
would agree that.
so your number two choice was Superboy. So you had him actually even higher than I did. My number two choice was actually Hal Jordan. And part of the reason I chose Hal Jordan is I actually don't use the character a lot personally, but I didn't want that to influence my decision. But it seemed like we were caught in the evasion meta for a long time, and that the rework of Hal Jordan, which I felt was pretty significant, both in terms of adding the debuff immunity at the start of the battle and then allowing his hammer to not miss and purge 10 buffs. It seemed to be the beginning and the end of the evasion meta. And so for me, I thought it was a really good rework, and especially maybe I have a soft spot for original characters in the game that I can farm that get reworked. So he was my number two choice. So just out of curiosity, did you have Hal on your list at all?
He did not make my list. And a similar argument again. I just thought he was too good a character before. Um, that can't miss made him absolutely amazing. It's just I just thought he was too good before as
Mm.
well.
But he wasn't really
But
around a lot. That was my thinking. Is like I never saw him.
yeah, I saw him a fair amount, I believe.
Right.
But I mean, I definitely have a soft spot for Hal as well because he he got me all the way through when I ran for Worlds. If it weren't for his rework right then at that, I probably wouldn't have made it.
And that was
So,
which World's Finest was that? The who was the
Mary
character?
Marvel.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, now I remember that. Okay. Yeah.
That was I believe, the week we met.
Yes, it was like really close to right before we formed the alliance.
Yeah.
Ah, memories. But you couldn't get him on the list, huh? Poor guy helps you through World's Finest, and you just don't even show him any love.
Oh, he's an honorable man. I'll give him that.
Okay, fair enough. All right,
I'll call
so
him 3A.
3A. All right, fair enough. Um, So what about your number one? I have a feeling you and I will have the same choice for number one.
I don't think there's any argument that it's Lex Luthor.
Yeah,
He was absolute garbage before this rework, and
yeah.
he has become one of the most important parts of the meta.
I don't know if you struggled with this at all, but one of the things that was hard for me was trying to remember what a character was like before their rework. But in Lex's case, I did remember, and everything was based on him having 50% or more health, and he was really squishy. So it made him, as you said, useless. Did you run into that struggle when you were trying to do this, trying to remember what a character was like before the rework?
Yeah, some of them, like Superboy, I had a hard time remembering because I just never used it.
Right, exactly.
Lex Luthor, I feel like I probably didn't look at his kit after maybe first or second month that I had been.
What's so nice for new players too is he's usually people's first team leader. It's either have Zatanna or him as a team leader, and so I remember getting him as a team leader when I started playing, thinking, oh yay, and then I saw how squishy he was. So it's kind of nice for newer players that they actually have a much more solid leader there that's farmable. All right. So I not as much arguing there as I thought we'd actually had some pretty similar choices, but maybe we'll have some arguments here as we go down.
Maybe.
I don't know about you, but I found mystical to be the hardest affinity to choose my characters from, because I actually don't feel like a lot of the reworks are very good in the mystical category.
I actually agreed. I only have two that I liked, two that I particularly.
You cut out on that last part. What was the last thing you said?
I'm saying that I have two that I do like and two that I particularly.
Right.
That
Gotcha.
was as far as I was able to make it.
Yeah, I struggled through it a bit. So why don't you start with your number three? We'll see. Well, you don't have a number three. So should I start with
Uh,
mine?
I guess looking back at the list, I could maybe pick one, but quickly off the top of my head, I would say maybe Doctor Fate,
Dr. Fate?
um, because his rework was pretty impressive for his time too. It didn't last.
Yeah, and he's one, like I said, that I didn't remember him very well beforehand, but you remembered as a really significant change.
I just remember he kind of came into the meta for a short period where he had not been there before.
Right, right. Yeah, I guess I never tinkered around with him enough, and I didn't really include him for the reason you said, which is nobody really uses him. I think he suffers from
Right.
being a very slow character.
And again, I'm just choosing that man off the top of my head. So
Yeah, no, that's no. It took, like I said, it took me a while to make my choices. My number three choice was actually Silver Banshee. And this isn't a character that I have used a lot, but the way I felt was she went from a character I didn't really fear very much to a character that I feel like I need to deal with right away so that she doesn't start wiping out my team as I've wiped out her team. So I included her as my number three.
I think that's fair. I don't use her much, but I have been the victim of her several times. Forgot how powerful.
Yeah, I think they did a good job with her rework. I see her in red alerts a lot, and that's where I feel like I need to deal with her quickly so that she can start nuking my team. But like you, I don't have her geared, so I can't speak for her playability. I can only speak for the way she is on defense. So what about your number two? Who did you choose for number two in Mystical?
I had Mira
Oh, really?
or
Okay.
Mara. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what's the right
Um,
pronunciation there.
yeah, she had the disadvantage of coming out, being reworked almost immediately before Black Manta came out. But for a moment, those she was putting, thousands of men's on your team, and it was fantastic. You could essentially never die if you had her on your team.
I guess that's
Then,
maybe what influenced me to not choose her because it was so quick, and I don't ever see anybody using her. And just as a point of reference, what we're referring to is that black mana can convert men's to bleeds, and so when you have this men character that comes along giving you tons and tons of men's, and then immediately following here comes Black Manta, well, it's a short-lived reign, I guess.
it was a very, very short-lived meta there. But since she was an Atlantean, I had her already geared, so I got to benefit from that one for a little while. That was nice.
I can't see choosing her because nobody uses her. I'm not saying she's not a good character. It's just I don't see anybody use her.
Right.
I mean, I'm saying that partially because I really do feel that way, and partially to get you to debate with me a little bit because you and I mean, we usually see eye to eye on most things, but I always enjoy our debates when you and I don't see eye to eye because you're always really respectful about it and we have good conversations. But for me, it's just like I never see her, so I don't know.
Right, and it's because Black Manta came out and just destroyed anybody's chances of using her ever again.
All
But
right.
but for a while, she just made you unbeatable because you would have so many men.
Yeah.
And then with her third, it powers up based on how men's are on it. She just becomes nuke against sort of green or blue.
Oh, you mean her third move does more damage the more men's you have?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and I will say, admittedly, I did not tinker around with her very much. I didn't level her up. But maybe that's because by the time I was getting to thinking about it, Black Manta had already come out. So,
Right.
so my number two was Swamp Thing, and it's here where I'm going to put a bit of a caveat on the way I'm choosing because I know the same argument could be thrown back at me, which is to say, well, nobody uses Swamp Thing. But I think the fact that nobody uses Swamp Thing is more a flaw in the star system than it is to do with the quality of his rework. Because he's a character that is based on revives, and you get punished for revives in the game because you lose stars. So for some of my choices, I actually think that I sort of took that into consideration. But I do think his rework was really good, and I remember he went from nobody really using him to suddenly Swamp Thing was on every team, and you had to kill every character twice.
Right.
So
I still
that's
use him.
do you?
I still like Swamp Thing. He's not my top three, but I like him. I like him a lot.
I never use him mostly because, like, again, I of the whole thing with getting punished for revive characters. And he always does better for the computer than for me. That
Of course.
passive where he uses his basic on the passive, I got the computer will be going nuts, and mine's standing there picking his nose or something. I don't. So yeah, that he was my second choice. But again, I really struggled with Mystical. All right, so should we move on to your number one choice?
Sure. I picked Sinestro Whiteland.
Okay.
Um, I think he would suffer from a lot of the same argument that you just made against Thing,
Yep, I would agree.
but if you ignore the star system, which is easier said than done, of course, he's just, I mean, he's a great team leader. He can bring back all of your characters,
Is it three
you know?
times? Is it three
Yeah,
times? Yeah.
several times.
Yeah, he's
And
pretty darn
so,
annoying.
and so at times, if you're playing on offense, it can feel like you're running 12 against 4, which makes you feel kind of powerful.
Yeah, I remember when they did the rework, and I think was it the siege after that? What a nightmare that was, trying to kill people in a siege. Holy mackerel.
Of course.
I thought about White Lantern Sinestro, but and I thought about it in the context of that same argument that I offered up, but I still don't even see anybody using him, even from the perspective of, you're just trying to get the win and you're willing to take the star losses. I just don't see anybody using him, but I do see Swamp Thing around sometimes. But that's not to say I don't agree with you, because I do think the Sinestro White Lantern rework was a good one. But I think where you and I are going to obviously disagree is with my top mystical choice, which I'm sure you already know what it is, which I think Black Adam was the best mystical rework. And I know you're going to say that the distance is not very great, but it really reinvigorated the character. People were buying Black Adam shards like they were going out of style. So I had Black Adam as mine. Now you feel free to roast me on that one.
No. I mean, his rework was amazing. He was already on my PvP team, and then it just made him that much better. It's how I felt when Kaga got reworked.
Yeah.
Thanks. I was already using him. He was already one of my favorites, but
yeah.
Thank you. Now he'll do more stuff.
Yeah, it was hard for me to remember what Black Adam was like beforehand. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember what some of the minor tweaks were?
I feel like they boosted his ear set. But for the most part, most of his moves did the same thing. He still did his AoE and then threw down his basic if anybody was under 50. I mean, he still reset if he killed somebody.
Did he get all the critical those moves chance ups?
See, that's what I can't remember, but if a lot of times it feels like it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I love
because you're just throwing that AoE over and over.
Yeah, exactly. I love pairing him with Owlman and just nuking the other team. And the one thing I heard somebody say about Black Adam, I don't remember who it was, but they said Black Adam does not discriminate. He doesn't care what your affinity is. He's still going to nuke you.
Of course.
So
because you're hitting them just over and over.
Yeah. It's so frustrating when you're playing a Black Adam and he gets that kill and you're like, well, might as well exit out of this one. It's over.
Especially if there's like a Red Hood lead on top of.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Well, the day is done.
Yeah, exactly. Which, that actually happened to me in a siege. I lost my first siege match tonight against a team that must have taken 14 turns in a row, but that was based off of the stun thing that's going on right now with Hawk Girl, and I gotta adjust my strategy for that. But it reminded me of Black Adam when it was happening. Let's move on to physical and talk. Now, I will say for me, and maybe you'll feel the same way, I had the opposite problem with physical that I did with mystical, in that I felt like there's so many good reworks in physical that it was hard for me to choose among all those good ones, whereas mystical was the opposite problem. Did you feel like that?
I agree. And when you hear my list, see an obvious.
You cut out again. What was the last thing you said?
I'm saying when you hear my list, you'll hear a pretty obvious choice missing from my physical.
Oh, okay.
But it's for a reason.
Gotcha. Why don't you start with your number 3 choice for physical?
Gotcha. And so this one is actually going to be caveated by the fact that they nerfed him to the point of being unusable. But I think one of the most important reworks ever was Deathstroke.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I told you the story of the first time that I faced a Deathstroke team the other day.
Yeah.
That was about as close as I ever got to quitting the game.
You should share that. Share the story because it's funny.
So, I made the mistake early on in the game of sinking all of my resources into my top four characters. Quickly rushed them up to level 70 and gear 11 because that was just coming out at the time that I got to gear 10.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had my Arrow Brothers, Siren, and Cyborg were my first four.
Cyborg.
And I came up against this Deathstroke team that had a completely unworked Lobo in. And I'm thinking, what's this fool doing putting in a Lobo with a power level of like 450?
Yeah.
And
The
the
birth
team
of
level
baby
was a good
Lobo.
like the team level was a good like 4 to 5,000 below whatever mine was. And they just mopped me up. I I started with Kaga's AoE, which of course killed Lobo, and he came back and added 1,000 bleeds to me. And then Deathstroke has so many strength ups and so many speed ups that he's just taking turns left and right, just nuking everybody.
Yeah, I will say I benefited the opposite way because I had just come in not too much before all this, and I was using that team to beat teams way above my pay grade. And in fact, the other strategy I was using is I would put in Deathstroke and three chumps in red alerts and let him kill the three chumps, and then Deathstroke would do the rest, and I would just zip through my red alerts.
Yeah, that was very fun for a while. It's just, yeah, once they nerfed first the combo of him and Baby Lobo,
Yeah.
and then just nerfed him out of existence. It was done, but for his time, I think that was the most important rework ever.
Well, and I will say that's why he's not on my list is the fact that it was the most important in terms of like knowing your history of DC, but in terms of now, I just in retrospect it was big then, but I don't see it as big now, which is perhaps another way we're viewing this is like, do we view the rework as important for when it happened, or do we're viewing the rework as what is the impact on now? And for me, I
I
was
think that
thinking
I'm
about
looking
now.
at it for. I think I was looking at it from when it happened. Hence, Mira, Sinnet.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, it's just a different way to look at it. I guess I was trying to think about, like I said, what are the ones that I think are still lasting now as good reworks. But man, poor Deathstroke. He's one of the siege tunes, and I really have to work hard to get that guy in there.
I've got him rebirthed, and I can't find a spot for him. So
I remember when you were going to rebirth him, and I was like, really? You were going to do that? But I know
it's
you have
done.
your
I ripped the
reason.
band-aid off.
Yeah, well, God bless you for doing it. As we say in the South, that's whenever somebody says, "Oh, bless their heart," or "God bless them," that means like, "What a dummy." No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I know. I grew up close to Kentucky.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Well, my number three choice was Penguin, and although I don't see Penguin used a lot, my working theory on that, at least why I don't use him a lot, unless I'm just in an evil mood and I want to torture people with the teams I'm going to put together, is you can win with him, but it takes a while, and I think most people are trying to get through their PvP pretty quickly. But if you really want to torture people, put Penguin in there and make them beat you, because it is a long grind against Penguin. And I feel like he went from a totally useless character to a really, really valuable character, especially as a tank.
I would agree.
He, I don't know, I think he obviously doesn't do much damage, which is another reason I think a lot of people don't like to use him. Are we in a pew pew meta, or I don't know. But I think that's the other reason people don't use him is he doesn't do a lot of damage. But he's one of the best tanks in the game and an extremely annoying character. For me, he pairs really well with Saint Walker because Saint Walker is constantly keeping the shield on him, which then allows him to taunt more.
Yep.
Did you have him on
throw
your
him
list
over
at
there
all?
was like he was very close.
Really? Was he one of your honorable mentions?
Again, this one kind of suffers from having just too many good choices,
Yeah.
but he was one that I wanted to. I'm glad you brought up because he was just a great rework.
Yeah. I really need to use him more, but I'm lazy and I want to get through my PvP fast.
Yeah, just throw it on there a few times so that your defensive team never loses with
Exactly.
like Saint and Barda or
The other night I was trying to come up with the most annoying combos because,
Bane maybe.
yeah, who else did I have? I think I had Arcus. I think I had Saint Walker, Arcus, Penguin, and Doomsday or something like that. And I thought, what a nightmare for somebody else playing against me. So who is your number 2 pick for physical?
I had a World's Greatest Detective.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a shock.
Again, similar argument to the Lex Luthor, which was he was just absolute garbage before. I remember I was sitting at like 4,000 shards of him, just looking for an excuse to level him up, but he
Right.
was just so useless.
I'm just so amazed by that because, I rebirthed him during the first siege because I thought, okay, this will help, do more damage in the siege. And he's the one I really regret wasting my rebirth crystals on because to me, he suffers from being too slow. And his whole kit doesn't work, in my opinion, because he's slow. Now, paired with the right people, when Lex first came out, or putting him with Donna Troy, that does work to a certain extent. But by himself, to me, suffers the problem of being too slow.
That's a fair enough argument.
Because what's the point in giving my team true sight if it's 20 minutes into the battle?
Fair. I tend to pair him a lot with Red Robin, though. So, I mean, it's just
That's a good
giving
idea.
him the turn meter to
That's a good
go ahead
idea.
and give it to me already.
That's a
I
good
mean,
idea.
maybe
I
it's
didn't think
just
about that.
how I use him. But
Yeah, maybe I'm just not using him right. I really want to like the character, don't get me wrong, both from the perspective of wanting because it's Batman and also because I put so much into him, but I just never use the guy. But you're going to disagree with my choice too, so that's fine. My number 2 choice was Red Hood. I don't know if you see him as an example of somebody just getting a power boost, but I actually see him as more than that because I remember somebody had put up a thread in the community center asking about what were the most useless moves in the game, and I said that his AoE was the most useless move in the game because it did no damage. The legendary ability gave you 2 evasion ups and you became invisible, which to me was a big nothing burger for the minor amount of AoE damage you were going to do. And then this move turns into like an atomic bomb. He's putting bleeds that can't miss. The heal immunity went from having a chance of being applied to guaranteed being applied. And to me, he went from being simply a counter to Deathstroke back in the day to one of the best, if not the best, physical lead in the game.
yeah, I already thought he was the best physical lead before his.
Really?
I used him daily on several different. He was always the lead for my blue.
I always felt like he didn't do enough damage on his moves, which sort of made me feel like
I was using him for his leadership ability.
Right, which has always been good, and I think that's the
Right.
same, right? That hasn't
Yes.
changed.
Yeah, turning the team meter down, killing.
Yeah, it's 50%, which is
Yes,
incredible. So I assume you didn't choose him, right? Because your argument would be he was already good.
right.
Yeah. See, I think he was good, but he became incredible. Um, but this is where you and I disagree, and that's fine. I just won't ever speak to you again. Just kidding. So who is your number one choice?
Uh, you may disagree with me here, but I think Joker.
The Clown Prince of Crime.
Yes. Um, he made it onto my bleed team and one of my um enraged teams for Sinestro as well. So he just kind of slotted into a lot of places and puts on.
Well, here's what I thought about because I did look at him when I was going through my list, and I will say he didn't even make my honorable mentions. And he's one of those that confuses me in the sense that everybody always talks about how good he is, but then I never see him. And no offense to the WRL guys because they're very high on him too, but I never see them use him. And that was a big factor to me with such a recent rework, right? Because he hasn't had the
Right.
time to slip into uselessness. But I just never see him, and so I felt like he can't be that valuable.
Maybe it's just because I still use him daily. His moves do a lot of damage, especially his third. His third also adds healing.
Yeah.
It's real good dealing with, Swamp Thing when he's still, you know, dealing with keep revive.
What was the last thing?
I'm saying he's good for any sort of reviving teams as well. So if you have
True.
like an Atrocitus and Wonder Girl team, he's going to be good to knock out Wonder Girl real quick.
That's true, and that's actually one of the teams that frustrates me the most. So that's a good idea for a counter to that because that is a maddening team whenever you see Atrocitus and Wonder Girl together.
It's maddening when you see Wonder Girl on any team.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, that's very true. I played a match last night. This is a little off topic, but I played a match last night where I'm not kidding. Somehow she went 3 times in a row with the whip. And I don't know how that was even possible, but I was ready to chuck my phone. Like, I was ready to go for a world record on phone checking because I didn't even know how it was possible for her to go that many times in a row with the whip. But needless to say, she killed most of my team and I ended up losing. So yeah, anybody who listens to the show knows I hate her as a character.
You are not alone. You are not alone.
Well, I appreciate it. I need solidarity for something like that because, so he was, so CPOC was your number one choice, was that right?
Yes, his second.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to go with his first rework.
Yeah, he made both of my lists. So he made my list of best and worst reworks.
Well, my choice was Castaway Green Arrow for number one, and he's probably along the same argument that we talked about before. You probably already thought he was good. I thought he was so vastly improved with the rework, and I think he's arguably the best physical character in the game.
He's definitely up there.
So we won't rehash the same argument that we had about Red Hood, but so here were my honorable mentions, and I wanted to hear yours too. My honorable mentions for physical because it was really hard to choose. Batgirl, I thought needed to be on there. She was a part of a meta for a long time. She has so many amazing abilities. Beast Boy certainly was a vast improvement over what he used to be. And Assault Warsuit Lex, I think, is somebody that's often overlooked that I think was a really good rework too.
Yeah, I also have this boy on my list because he went from being nothing at all to being sometimes like he's unkillable.
Yeah. Do you remember when they after the rework? I think he um, there was some event where you had to kill him in the very last node, and it was almost impossible. And I remember so
Yeah,
many people struggling with that.
yes, I remember. I think it was I think it was the hardest hero challenge, the maybe the Power Girl or yeah, Power Girl one, because that one was very difficult for people too.
Yeah, I love the way you said it because it was like you almost were having like these Vietnam flashbacks or something.
Oh, I'm still mad from the other day, and I hit him with Larfleeze's 3 with all kinds of intelligence ups, and
Still
I
didn't
think I
die.
had some critical chances, and I think it did. You smidge of
God, he is a good rework. Who else did you have on your honorable mentions?
that was the only one.
Oh, okay, okay. Well,
There is one more red character that I want to talk about.
okay, go ahead.
I've got it in a different category.
Oh,
I
okay.
believe we'll get there
Oh,
later.
okay, okay,
Yeah,
gotcha, gotcha. Well, let's talk about our. So the last three things I want to do are our overall top three, and then we're going to talk about worst reworks, and then our most improved overall. Right. So the distance from where they were to where they are was the greatest. Um, so why don't you lead the way on your overall top three reworks?
oh, I think that I may have done this. I just have one.
Well, that's fine. We can just do one because we're getting up towards like I'm at about 52 minutes for recording, so we can just do what we think is the overall best rework.
Sure.
Do you want to?
Uh,
How about we both say ours at the same time? Because
sure.
I'm gonna bet it's the
John
same.
Stamos,
All right. So one, two, three. Survival suit
Harley Quinn.
Lex. Ooh, wow,
Harley Quinn.
wow.
Uh, I just think that her rework has made her part of the meta for so long that it's hard to deny how important it was
That's a good
because
point.
it was her rework was before Deathstroke, and she's still on almost every team that you fight.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think you make a strong argument. So
It has
why
kept
wasn't
her
she on your
relevant for
why
like a
wasn't she
year and
on
a
your
half
physical list then?
because I had her as best overall.
Oh, okay. You're just reserving the slot somewhere else. Okay, gotcha,
Yes,
gotcha. Well, I had
yes,
survival suit Lex because I feel like he went from absolute garbage to arguably the best team leader in the game. Um, until there's a natural counter to overheal, I think he'll continue to be the best. I see him everywhere on my boards. Um,
yeah. I still don't struggle with. I mean, I still use Black Adam a lot though too. So
that's true. I think the thing to me that I like about Lex is he gave so many characters a second life. That
yeah,
characters that were in the garbage bin that suddenly had new usefulness.
hmm
And
and you can make so many different comps.
yeah,
He just
yeah,
makes so many different people relevant.
yeah. I will have to say I'm still thinking about your choice, and I think it's really a good one because she is really a super annoying character. Um, and
And it doesn't matter how many direct counters that you make. I mean, Batman: The Dark Knight was supposed to be a direct counter to her when they
hmm
reworked him.
yeah, I remember that.
Uh, Hal Jordan worked effectively for a while, but there's been so many other shifts that he's not always the best. You've got Red Robin that came out,
And just as a
and
point
so
of
many were
trivia
just meant to
is
deal with her.
just as a point of trivia is the Dark Knight the only rework to ever shift affinity?
I believe so.
Because I can't think of another person that shifted affinity.
Yeah, I can't either.
So he might be the only one. All right, why don't we talk about? So, did you? How many choices did you? Did you just choose a worst rework overall, or did you choose multiples? Because I only chose one.
I chose at least one from every category.
Okay, okay. Um, so you want to start with energy then?
Sure. Energy, I kind of had the a strange problem, which was I didn't feel like many of them were particularly bad. They just didn't do enough to the character to make them useful.
Yeah,
So I actually have Terra or the Dark Knight, where they changed them, but not enough to make them useful in a way.
yeah. I would say I agree with you with Terra. I had brought Terra up when Man Bat showed up with the disease stuff because I thought she'd be a good counter. I mean, a stiff breeze knocks her over, and it's super frustrating. And then her move that you have like a 30% chance for 20% shield or something like that. It's just so useless.
I remember her original kit would do damage to your team. It so
Yes,
that's why I always avoided her originally.
right. Yeah, the meltdown. Um, so yeah, I would
So
actually agree
I
with you
guess
on
their
Terra.
reworks didn't necessarily they didn't make them any better or worse. You know, they just got reworked.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I think Yellow Lantern Sinestro falls in that category. I mean, to me, he's still garbage, but he's no more garbage than he was.
Yeah, you can find uses, but you very much have to force him onto a team.
So for Mystic, I'm actually going to go first on this one because my choice for Mystic would not only be my choice of worst Mystic rework, but the worst rework overall, which is Blue Beetle. Because here's a character that was already bad, and somehow they made him worse. And it amazes me that you could even find the room to make a character that's that bad even worse. So I had him as my worst Mystic and worst overall rework.
I'm glad. I was afraid I was going to hurt your feelings because I also have Blue Beetle as my my worst.
No, you don't hurt my feelings at all. I did try him and I wanted to give him an
I know
honest
how much
shot.
you know how much you love him.
Well, my love for Blue Beetle is only because he shares the special place of having been my first legendary character. I have no love for the kit. Let's put it that way. He's pure garbage, unfortunately. So we both agree there. Was he your worst overall, or just worst for Mystic?
Uh, I would say, yeah, he's probably just my worst for Mystic.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, what about physical? Who did you have as worst rework for physical? I think you and I will probably agree on this one.
Uh, I think I already mentioned it, but that was Joker's first rework.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was one of the worst, if not the worst. I think an argument could be
Yes,
made that it's a really
I
big.
have him as my worst overall, also. So
Yeah, I think it's a tight race between him and Blue Beetle, but I went with Blue Beetle simply because I'm mad that my first legendary character stinks.
mine was Supergirl, so I'm not a whole lot ahead of you.
I think she has some good usefulness, especially
Yeah, she's
when
not as bad as Blue Beetle,
Deadshot
but
was around so much.
yeah, she's no Blue Beetle, but she's not great either.
So for you, worst rework was Joker CPAC, and for me, it was Blue Beetle. How about the most improved overall? So this is like, what do they call those superlatives in high school? Um, who would you say was the most improved overall?
It would be a hard choice between Lex Luthor or Deathstroke.
Yeah, I had Lex, but I can see the argument for Deathstroke. But part of the reason I couldn't choose Deathstroke is I don't have a very good memory of what he was like before because I was such a new player at that time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Lex went from the garbage bin of DC Legends to S tier, and I'm wondering how long this meta will be around. But I can see the argument for Deathstroke back in the day, and I know you and I disagree a little bit about whether it counts for now or counts at the time it occurred, but I can see the argument.
Yeah. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I that's why I wanted to do this episode because it's fun to talk about how we think about the game because it kind of is informative to the listeners in and of itself of how we think about it. Anything else that we didn't say about reworks that we should?
I think we still wanted to talk the characters most in need of a rework.
Oh yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, so why don't we talk about that? Who do we think is in most need of a rework? And I'll let you start. You're the guest.
Sure. Well, there's the, typical answers of Chemo and Batman CC.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I think you won't be surprised that I would love to see Rider of the King Tide
yeah,
reworked again.
yeah,
I feel like his kit just doesn't work for his speed. I feel like he's too fast to his best moves.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, and he's somebody I swear I have never seen him on a PvP team. Never.
I used him a little bit when he first came out, and I have tried. He doesn't do any damage. You can make him do some damage with Steppenwolf, but you have to kind of dance around who the character is in such a way that it makes it kind of hard to force.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, again, Wonder Girl, right? Because the only way to get him really working is with tons and tons of buffs, and it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
do that when you have Wonder Girl around.
Yeah, and if you get those buffs, it's great because his I think it's his third knockout anybody.
Oh, really?
But it's so hard to get him in a position that he can do that. It kind of wastes his talent.
Yeah. I think we were all shocked too when the Aquaman movie came out and everybody, or when was it? Was it? There was a time where it was a movie or something had come out and everybody thought, oh, for sure, here's where he gets his rework, and then
Yeah, it
instead
was
they,
the Aquaman movie
yeah, and they,
because he came out for justice.
that's right. Okay, now, okay, I knew so, and then they reworked King of Atlantis, and everybody, what?
Who didn't need a rework.
No, no. Um, like for me, I've always got a bit of a soft spot for some of the original characters. I think Zatanna certainly needs a rework. Never see her really. Her leadership ability is absolute garbage, in my opinion. And what's strange is I think she got some sort of minor rework along the way that we were never told about because her leadership ability did change slightly, but it wasn't dramatic. But somebody like her, I'm trying to remember who the other one I was thinking of that
Cyborg.
Cyborg is in desperate need of a rework.
He was a lot of people's first nuke character, so it would be nice to see him brought back in some sort of.
Yeah, especially as an original Justice League member. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anyone else I left out that really needs a. If Tuditron were on here, he'd want me to say, or he would say, Ra's al Ghul.
Roz,
Yeah,
of course.
which he's right. The character's really garbage and is in desperate need of a rework.
Agreed. He's
Uh,
just not one of my favorite characters.
Me neither. I mean, he's an interesting character and a formidable opponent for Batman, but just he doesn't do it for me. Plus, Revive. It's difficult right now. All right, anything else we missed? I'm glad you reminded me of that.
Of course. Not that I can think of.
Well, as always, I appreciate you coming on with me and doing this. We're doing this now at 11:30 at night on a Thursday, so thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Of course, glad to be here.
And if you've made it this far into the video, well then congratulations. You are really somebody who sticks with things, and we appreciate it. We'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Who do you think are the best reworks? Who do you think are the worst reworks? Leave a comment in the comment section to let us know what you think. We appreciate you sticking with the video this long. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. Otherwise, I won't see you next time.